The camera was mounted on a hemlock to count wood duck broods on a slow bend of the reservoir. Pay attention to the aluminum canoe that shows up on the bank on March 4th, and the 7 mornings after, tied to a different tree each time. The card held 41 days of footage. Ranger Dale Petrosky pulled it on a Tuesday in early April from the Site 12 camera on the North Cove of Kellerman Reservoir. Kellerman Reservoir sits inside a state wildlife management area closed to public boat traffic from November through May, a window set aside for wood, duck, and hooded merganser nesting along the flooded timber of the North Cove. The department had lost 2 brood counts in 3 years to disturbance, and the camera was one of 6 placed low along the shoreline to log activity without a warden walking the bank every morning and doing the disturbing themselves. The cove is quiet water, dead timber standing in 8 feet of it, the kind of place that looks abandoned until you notice how much is nesting in it. The camera was there to watch a population that was already shrinking count itself 1 more year, on the chance there would still be one to count after this. Dale Petrosky is 47, a district wildlife ranger with the State Department of Natural Resources for 19 years. He has pulled several hundred cards off cameras like this one and can tell a startled wood duck from a spooked merganser by the shape of the water they leave behind. He expected 41 days of empty cove, a few decent brood clips, and nothing else. The first 3 weeks are exactly that. A hen wood duck works the shallows at 6:40 a.m. on February 22nd. A raccoon crosses the frame at 11:14 p.m. 2 nights later. Unremarkable. Mist sits on the water most mornings until almost 8. It is boring footage, the good kind. The kind that means the cove is doing what it's supposed to do without anyone bothering it. Dale scrolls through most of it at double speed, pausing only for the brood counts, marking timestamps in a notebook without looking up much. By day 19, he is moving fast, thumb on the forward button, expecting the rest of the card to be more of the same. At 5:52 a.m. on March 4th, an aluminum canoe sits pulled halfway onto the bank, 30 feet from the camera, tied off to a swamp oak at the edge of the frame. It was not there the night before. Dale marks the timestamp but keeps scrolling. Somebody put a canoe in wrong water and walked out, he tells himself, or a warden from another district ran a line he didn't know about. It happens. He moves on to the next clip. 6 days later, on March 10th, the canoe is back in frame. It is tied to a different tree, 40 feet down the bank from the oak. Same hull, same dent above the waterline on the port side. Dale stops scrolling. He sets down the coffee. A canoe does not tie itself to a new tree on its own logic. He goes back to February 22nd and starts again, slower. The canoe appears 7 times across the 41 days, always between 5:40 a.m. and 6:10 a.m., always 3 days apart, and always tied to a tree slightly farther east than the last one. March 4th, the swamp oak. March 7th, a dead sycamore 40 feet on. March 10th, a hemlock past that. Each mooring sits roughly 35 feet from the one before it, moving down the cove in the same direction every time, never once doubling back. It is not a person losing a canoe. It is a person walking a canoe down a shoreline on a schedule, 3 days at a time, like the hand of a clock working its way around a dial too slow to notice unless you're watching the whole face at once. By the 5th appearance, Dale understands the pattern is not random drift. Someone is checking something along this stretch of bank, in order, at intervals, and moving the boat to match. He does not yet know what. He does know the checking has a shape, and the shape ends somewhere past the last tree in frame, out past where the camera can see. The most unsettling part of the pattern is not the canoe. It's that every mooring lands at first light, in the exact 10 minutes before the earliest hen usually starts working the shallows. On the 7th appearance, March 22nd, 5:58 a.m., a man steps into frame to adjust the bow line, and a wood duck flushes off the water 6 feet behind him, loud enough that he turns toward the camera to check the sound. For 1.5 seconds, his face is square to the lens. He is heavy-set, gray in the beard, moving like someone whose knees have opinions about mornings like this. He ties the knot without looking at his hands. The image was run against the state's boating registration and prior citation database. A name came back. The name that came back was Walter Ruiz Comby, 61, of Ashford County, 20 minutes from the reservoir gate. Records showed no boat launch permit issued for Kellerman under his name, no seasonal access waiver on file, and one prior verbal warning from a different warden 4 years earlier for foot traffic in a closed nesting zone. No citation issued. The area's boating closure runs November 1st through May 15th without exception, and Canoe held no exemption of any kind. Cross-referenced against the pattern on camera, the every 3-day cadence matched no permitted activity in the reservoir's records, no research access, no maintenance contract, nothing that explained a man checking a line of something down the shoreline on a fixed schedule before daylight. Across the 41 days, the camera had caught him 7 times, moving the canoe a combined 230 feet east down the cove, always in the same 10-minute window at first light. Wardens followed the mooring line east from the last tide position in frame, along the bank past where Site 12's camera could see. The trail led to 11 collapsible wire traps staked into the mud at even intervals, each one baited and each one tied off to shore with the same gauge of nylon cord, wound and cleated the same way at every stake. It was not a rushed operation. Whoever built this had done it enough times that the knots had gone efficient. No wasted line, no guessing. One trap had algae growth old enough that wardens estimated it had been in place since at least the previous autumn, months before the camera's window even started. The full inventory came to 11 traps, 6 containing live snapping turtles, and a hand net stashed in the sycamore's hollow with turtle scent still on the mesh. Walter Comby spent 26 years running a small commercial turtle operation out of Ashford County, selling snapping turtles to buyers who shipped them to soup markets on the coast and, later, to exporters supplying turtle meat overseas. It was legal work for most of that time. Licensed, seasonal, unremarkable. The kind of trade nobody in town thought twice about because it had always been there. In 2019, the state closed commercial snapping turtle harvest on public reservoirs statewide, citing population decline, and Comby's license lapsed with nowhere to renew it. He was 56 that year. He had no other trade. His wife had died the winter before the closure, and the harvest income had been the thing he still knew how to do with his hands after she was gone. When the license closed, what he lost was not just income. It was the last structured reason to be on the water at dawn, which had been the shape of his marriage and then the shape of his grief. Comby did not see himself as poaching in the way the word is usually meant. He kept the same 11 trap sites he had always used, checked them on the same 3-day rotation he had run for 2 decades, because that rotation was what a healthy trap line required to avoid drowning the catch, a fact he knew from experience, not guesswork. He moved the canoe down the bank in careful order, because a diagonal walk across the mud instead would have torn up the shoreline he'd worked for years, and some old habit of care kept him from doing that even after the work stopped being legal. It is the kind of thing a reckless man does not bother with. And yet Comby was not running a large operation. 11 traps is a small line by commercial standards, not the scale you'd expect from someone working the black market seriously. He never expanded past what the reservoir had always supported, never took more turtles per rotation than the old legal quota had allowed him, as if some part of him were still operating inside a permit that no longer existed. The hardest fact in the case is not that he broke the law. It's that he broke it by doing, almost exactly, what he had done legally for 26 years, on the same schedule, at the same trees, for a market that used to have his name on a license. Wardens did not have to search for Comby. The 3-day cadence had already told them when and where the next mooring would fall. They were on the bank before first light on March 25th, the 8th expected rotation, when the canoe came around the bend and Comby tied off to a red maple 3 trees past the last documented position. He did not run. He set the bow line down slow and stood with both hands loose at his sides, looking at the water rather than at the wardens. In the canoe were 4 snapping turtles in a mesh bag, a scale, and a spiral notebook with weights logged by date going back 14 months. He said almost nothing beyond confirming his name. Comby was charged with illegal commercial harvest of protected wildlife and unauthorized entry into a closed wildlife management area, both misdemeanors under state conservation code, carrying a maximum combined penalty of 1 year in county custody and an $8,000 fine. He was sentenced to 18 months probation, a $2,400 fine, restitution covering trap removal and shoreline restoration, and a lifetime ban on any boating or harvest permit within the reservoir system. The 11 traps were seized and destroyed. The turtles in his possession at the time of arrest were released back into the cove. The notebook was entered into evidence and then returned to him at sentencing at his request. The knot in this one is not whether Combe broke the law. He did. 7 documented times and probably many more before the camera arrived to count them. The knot is that the same 3-day rotation the court called unauthorized entry is the identical rhythm the state itself certified as sound wildlife management for 26 years, right up until the year it stopped being legal for him to keep doing it. The market that used to buy what he caught was not in the courtroom. The closure that ended his license without offering him another trade was not in the courtroom. Neither was the winter his wife died, though it is hard to look at the notebook's dates and not think it was sitting somewhere in the room. The court was not wrong to close the case the way it did. Population decline is real. The closure was reasoned, and the traps were where the traps should not have been. But a courtroom can only rule on the 11 traps in front of it. It cannot rule on what a man is supposed to do with the 26 years of a skill that used to be legal and is not asking anyone whether he still needs it. The harder question the sentencing never had to answer is what a closure owes the person it closes, if anything, and what he was supposed to do at first light instead, if there was in fact a version of this where he did not. It is not a crime exactly, and it is not a grief exactly. It is just a man who kept a permit schedule for a permit that no longer existed, and a reservoir that has no way of knowing the difference between the two. The camera on Kellerman Reservoir's North Cove had been mounted to a hemlock to count wood duck broods on water that was already losing them. For 41 days, it did exactly that. The hen at 6:40, the raccoon at 11:14, the mist that never lifted before 8. It also documented a canoe tied to 7 different trees, walking east down the bank in perfect 3-day intervals, and it kept every mooring, every knot, every first light appointment, until the pattern added up to more than a lost boat could explain away. Every case on this channel starts with something that doesn't belong in the frame. A canoe tied to a new tree each morning. A notebook of weights going back 14 months. A rotation kept on schedule for a license that no longer existed. Pay attention to what the camera keeps.